We're rounding up economic growth and GDP. So we have, after purchasing power parity, we need to talk about income and subjective happiness. Before we go to income and subjective happiness, we need to talk about purchasing power parities. Why do we have PPP? We have PPP because most of the time, we cannot compare the living standards of people based on what they buy if we do not have a unit exchange rate. So it's difficult for me to compare. It's difficult for us to compare Nigerian living standard with Libyan's living standard. If we have to do that, we need to reach an agreement based on a certain currency because Nigeria uses naira, Libya uses dinars. So using naira and dinars to compare might be difficult. So we need to find a ground that will make us to have the same units. So if we have to compare the living standards in Nigeria and the living standards of Libya, we might use the dollar. So what is the value of this certain amount of money spent? Oh, the value, okay, this is a marker. The value, okay, here it is 3 dinars. Maybe in Nigeria it is 10 naira. So how much is 10 naira in dollar? How much is 3 dinar in dollar? So using dollar means we are able to use a unit, a currency, to compare the price of this good. Do you understand purchasing power parity here? We need a common ground because we want to compare goods purchased, the prices of goods or services in a country, between countries. So we can't use dinars and naira, it's difficult. So we need to find a common ground, an exchange rate that allows us to use the same quantity for the same unit or the same price. Do you get the point I'm making here? So dinars is going to be separately, dinars is not going to be used, naira is not going to be used. We are reaching a common ground, which is dollar. So that's what purchasing power parity is about. Do we understand purchasing power parities here? We buy goods and services from different countries. Nigeria will buy. There are markers in Nigeria, there is marker here. There are markers here. But what is the price here and what is the price about there? So now in dollar. So because it's dollar is $1. So $1 could be 6 dinars, $1 could be 10 naira. So now we know that the price of this good or service in dollar is this amount. That's what we call purchasing power. Can you just please be here? This is what we call purchasing power parity. Do we get purchasing power parity? We want to compare countries based on what they pay in terms of what they buy, prices. But we need to find a common ground. So we're not going to use the country's currencies. We're going to use an acceptable currency like the dollar, like the euro. So how much is 5 dinars in euro? How much is 10 naira in euros? So that's what we use. That's purchasing power parity. Do we get it, please? So for purchasing power parity, I wrote, is the exchange rates used to compare different countries in terms of goods and services purchased. So in terms of what we consume here and there, how much is it in dollars? That is what purchasing power parity is. Is it clear? So PPP is used to ensure that one currency is used when there is the need to compare the living standards of different countries based on the price for the same item. So like I told you about the marker, the price of the marker in dinars, the price of the marker in naira. So what is the conversion rate of naira to dollars, and what's the conversion rate of dinars to dollar? So that's what we use. So in the course of recording it, in Nigeria they pay $10 for this product, or in Libya they pay $6 on this product. Is it clear now? Any question about purchasing power parities? Good. So that takes us to indicators of national happiness and well-being. For well-being, simply talks about our living standard. You don't try what I'm doing, please. Your pen down. For well-being, for our standard of living, simply talking about the quality of life we are able to afford. That is standard of living. So I'm going to read further. Standard of living simply implies the quality of life and well-being. Well-being or happiness can be measured through material welfare. So our well-being is based on material welfare, like things that we have access to. So if in this country they have access to education, they have access to quality goods or services, this can also simply mean the quality of life in Libya is fine, it's better. So it's always going to be on material welfare. Do you get the point I'm making here? Okay? So when comparing well-being, it might be based on individual subjective happiness, which may be based on the following. 1, access to education. So with better quality education, it means the workforce will be improving, will be effective, will be productive, and the quality of life there will be better. So education is one of the most important things for every nation. Do you understand? So the quality of education we have here will determine about the future of the country. The second one, access to better healthcare. So healthcare is also important because with better healthcare, the living standard, the life expectancy is expected to increase because people have access to better healthcare. Do you understand the point I'm making here? So this also accounts to the living standard. The third one, feeling of safety. Oh, are we safe in this country? Are we sure there's not going to be war very soon? So these things, the feeling you have about being safe can also be added to your living standard. The next one, long-term employment. Do people have jobs for a long period of time, or it's fictional unemployment, like people lose jobs every now and then, or structural unemployment? So the level of employment or the rate of employment or unemployment in a country can also determine the living standards of that country. Because if the level of employment is high, the income level will also be high. People will be able to buy more, consume more, and your consumption is also part of what decides your living standard. Do you get the point there? And the last one, pollution. When we talk about pollution, we know what pollution is, right? So how is pollution being managed in a country? Because if pollution is not being managed, carbon emission, if it continues to increase in the country might have decline in healthcare, in health. So this might also affect the economy and the living standard. So all this being said, after saying all this, now that we know all these indicators, that they are part of the living standard, when I talked previously about the limitations about GDP and GNI, I used Nigeria and Libya. I said Nigeria has a higher GDP than Libya, but the GDP per capita of Libya is higher than the GDP per capita of Nigeria. And why? Because of the population. The population differs, yes or no? So, but at the end of it all, I said we can still not compare the living standard of Nigeria with Libya. So with these indicators, it might allow us to understand the country that has a better living standard. Do you get the point here? So we don't only use the GDP per capita. Target here. Yes. We don't only use GDP per capita to compare the living standard because we might not have accuracy. But when we use all these indicators, it might give us a level ground, a level playing ground to compare countries. Because when we say, okay, the GDP per capita of Libya is higher than the GDP per capita of Nigeria, but this is based on population. So now we check. Does Libya has a better health care than Nigeria? Does Libya has a better quality education than Nigeria? We start comparing these things. So when we had all these indicators to GDP per capita, we might be able to find a level playing ground when we compare countries. Are they clear? Any questions about this? Thank you.